The morning sun painted the sky pink over New Bizen Colony as Hay-One stepped outside her small house. Her old bones creaked with each movement, but she smiled anyway. Today was like every other day for the past 30 years. She would tend to her special garden. The other colonists on Tying 4 thought she was strange. They'd built their homes far from the weird crystal patches that dotted the planet, not Hay-One. She had chosen the spot closest to the largest crystal field she could find. The soil there shimmered with tiny metal flakes and strange vine-like things grew from the ground. Most people called them alien weeds. One called them dragon's hair. She picked up her old metal watering can and walked slowly to the garden. The dragon's hair caught the morning light and sparkled like jewelry. Each strand was as thick as her finger and covered in tiny scales that shifted from silver to gold to deep blue. They grew in twisted patterns, reaching toward the sky in spirals. That reminded her of the dragons from old Korean stories. "Good morning, my beauties," Hay-One said softly. She always talked to her plants. It felt natural, even if these plants were unlike anything that grew on old Earth. She knelt beside the first cluster of dragon's hair. Her joints protested, but she ignored the pain. These plants needed her care. They had no one else. Hay-One began her daily ritual. First, she filled a small bowl with the special water she collected from the crystal springs. The water had a slight blue tint and tasted of metal, but the dragon's hair seemed to love it. She poured it carefully around the base of each cluster, watching as the metallic soil absorbed every drop. Next came the braiding. This was the part that made the other colonists shake their heads. Hay-One would carefully separate the individual strands of dragon's hair and weave them together in simple patterns. The metal-like surface felt warm under her fingers, almost alive. Sometimes she swore she could feel a pulse running through them. "There we go," she whispered as she finished braiding a particularly long strand. "Much better now." The dragon's hair seemed to shimmer brighter when she braided it. The scales would shift colors more quickly, creating waves of light that danced across the garden. One had learned over the years that different braiding patterns created different light. Tight braids made the light pulse slowly. Loose braids made it flicker like fireflies, but the most important part of her ritual was the singing. Hay-One had been born on old Earth. In a small village in Korea, her grandmother had taught her the old songs, the ones that farmers used to sing to help their crops grow. When she first started caring for the dragon's hair, she had tried talking to them like normal plants. But they had seemed sad somehow, their light dim and colors muted. Then one day, she had started humming an old lullaby her grandmother used to sing. The dragon's hair had immediately brightened, their scales shifting to warm gold and green. From that day on, singing became part of the daily routine. "Ararung, ararung, orario," she sang now, her voice cracked with age, but still carrying the melody. "Ararung gagaro neomio ganda." The dragon's hair swayed gently as she sang, even though there was no wind. Their light pulsed in rhythm with the music. One smiled and continued the song, moving from cluster to cluster as she worked. Dong-Ho watched from his kitchen window next door. He was a good neighbor, always checking on her, but he worried too much. She could see him shaking his head as she sang to the alien plants. "Crazy old woman," he had called her once, though not unkindly. "Those things aren't even alive." But Hay-One knew better. The dragon's hair responded to her touch, her voice, her presence. They grew brighter when she was happy and dimmed when she was sad. They were alive in their own strange way. She finished the lullaby and moved to the largest cluster, in the center of her garden. This one was special. It had been the first to respond to her care, and over the years it had grown into a beautiful spiral taller than her head. The individual strands were thicker here, and the scales more detailed. Sometimes she thought she could see tiny patterns etched into each scale, like writing in a language she couldn't read. "Hello, my old friend," she said, placing both hands on the spiral. The warmth immediately flowed into her palms. "How are you today?" The dragon's hair pulsed once, slowly, and all the colors shifted to a deep, peaceful blue. Hay-One began braiding. the outer strands of the spiral, working her way around in a clockwise pattern. This was delicate work. The strands here were more sensitive and she had to be gentle. But they trusted her. In 30 years, she had never hurt them, never pulled too hard or braided too tight. As she worked, she told them about her day, about the letter from her grandson on Mars Colony, about the new family that had moved in down the street, about the strange dreams she had been having lately, dreams of vast spaces and distant stars. The dragon's hair listened. She was sure of it. Their light would pulse in response to her words, bright when she shared good news, soft when she spoke of worries. Sujin, the colonial administrator, had visited last week. She had tried to convince Haewon to move to the main settlement. It's not safe out here alone, Sujin had said. And those crystal formations might be dangerous. We don't really know what they are, but Haewon had refused. The dragon's hair needed her. Who would tend them if she left? Who would braid their strands and sing them to sleep? She finished her work on the central spiral and stood back to admire it. The entire garden now pulsed with gentle light, the braided patterns creating complex designs that shifted and flowed like living art. This was her masterpiece. Built one day at a time over 3 decades, the morning ritual was complete, but Haewon didn't go inside yet. She sat on her old wooden stool and simply watched her garden. The dragon's hair swayed in their eternal dance, scales catching the sunlight and throwing rainbows across the crystal soil. She had no idea that deep beneath her feet, ancient machinery was stirring, that her songs and gentle touch were awakening systems that had slept for 50,000 years. That across the galaxy, sensors were beginning to detect signals from a world that had been silent since before humans learned to make fire. Haewon knew none of this. She only knew that her dragon's hair was beautiful, and they needed her care, and that was enough. 3 days later, the solar storm hit Taiyang 4 harder than anyone expected. Haewon woke to the sound of emergency sirens wailing across New Bizan Colony. The sky outside her window blazed with angry red light. Solar flares danced across the atmosphere like giant ribbons of fire. The Colonial Weather Service had warned about the storm, but they said it would be mild. They were wrong. Haewon pulled on her old coat and stepped outside. The air felt electric. Her hair stood up on her arms, and she could taste metal on her tongue. But what worried her most was her garden. The dragon's hair was glowing brighter than she had ever seen. Each strand pulsed with light so intense it hurt to look at directly. The colors shifted rapidly from white to gold to deep purple. The spiral patterns she had braided yesterday moved on their own, untwisting and retwisting in complex designs. "Oh no," she whispered. "Are you in pain?" She hurried to the central spiral, her biggest and oldest cluster of dragon's hair. It was the brightest of all, pulsing so fast the light looked almost solid. When she touched it, the warmth she usually felt had become intense heat. "You're burning up," she said, pulling her hand back quickly, but then she noticed something else. The dragon's hair wasn't just hot. It was trembling. The thick strands shook like they were afraid. One had seen animals act this way during storms on old Earth. They would shake and hide, scared by the thunder and lightning. Maybe the dragon's hair felt the same way about the solar storm. "It's okay," she said softly, reaching out to touch the spiral again despite the heat. "I'm here. Don't be afraid." The moment her palm touched the central cluster, something changed. The violent pulsing slowed to a steady rhythm. The harsh white light shifted to a warmer gold. The trembling stopped, but now Haewon could feel something else, a vibration that seemed to come from deep underground. It started as just a whisper in her bones, but it grew stronger as she held her hand against the dragon's hair. The solar storm raged overhead, but Haewon didn't leave her garden. Every time she tried to pull away, the dragon's hair would start trembling again. They needed her comfort. They needed to know someone cared about them during the frightening storm. So she stayed for 6 hours. She sat with her hands pressed against the central spiral. She sang every old song she could remember. When she ran out of songs, she told stories. When she ran out of stories, she just talked about anything that came to mind. My grandmother used to say storms were just the sky having bad dreams, she said, as another flare painted the clouds crimson. Maybe that's what this is. A big bad dream that will be over soon. The dragon's hair pulsed gently, as if agreeing with her. As the night wore on, the vibration from underground grew stronger. Hey, one could feel it in her chest now, a deep thrumming, like a giant heartbeat. Sometimes she thought she heard sounds mixed with the vibration, mechanical clicks and whirs like old computers starting up, but she didn't think much about it. She was too focused on comforting her dragon's hair. Dawn came slowly, the solar storm finally weakening as the sun rose. The emergency sirens stopped wailing. The angry red light faded from the sky, but the dragon's hair continued to glow brighter than ever before. And now they were making sounds. Soft, musical tones drifted from each cluster like wind chimes made of crystal. The sounds were beautiful but strange. They didn't sound like anything from Earth or any other world HFY had visited. That's new, she said, finally pulling her hands away from the central spiral. Her palms tingled where she had touched the dragon's hair. Looking down, she saw faint golden lines across her skin, like temporary tattoos. They didn't hurt, but they felt warm and seemed to pulse with their own light. Dong-ho came running across his yard as soon as he saw her standing up. Hey, You crazy? He called out. You stayed outside during the whole storm. I was ready to drag you inside myself. The dragon's hair needed me, she said simply. They were scared. Dong-ho looked at the glowing garden. His eyes went wide. They weren't doing that before the storm. No, HFY agreed. Something changed, but neither of them realized how. Much had changed. Deep beneath Taiyang 4. In caverns that had been dark for 50,000 years, ancient machines were waking up. Massive computers the size of buildings hummed to life. Power flowed through conduits buried in the planet's crust. Control systems that had waited patiently for millennia began running their startup sequences, the bio-neural networks that humans called. Dragon's hair were actually interface systems for this ancient technology. They had been designed to respond to one specific signal. Not a radio frequency or digital code, but something much more complex. The signal of a caring, protective intelligence. For 3 decades, HFY's daily ritual had slowly charged the interface networks. Her songs, her gentle touch, her obvious love for the strange plants had convinced the ancient systems that something important was happening on the surface, but it was her actions during the solar storm that finally triggered the full activation. When faced with danger, instead of running away, she had stayed to comfort what she saw as frightened creatures. She had put their well-being above her own safety. The ancient computers recognized this pattern. It matched what they had been programmed to look for eons ago. The behavior of a guardian species across the galaxy, monitoring stations that had been silent since the fall of the precursor civilization began transmitting. Automated beacons sent out signals to every corner of known space. The message was simple but shocking. Guardian protocol activated. New caretaker species identified. Defensive networks coming online on dozens of worlds. Alien governments received these transmissions with confusion and growing alarm. The precursors had been myths and legends for so long that most species had forgotten they ever existed. But their old automated systems were still out there, waiting and watching. The Vorak Empire's War Council met in emergency session. The hegemony of suns mobilized their exploration fleets. Dozens of smaller civilizations began preparing for either opportunity or disaster. But on Taiyang 4, HFY just went inside to make herself some tea. Her hands still tingled with the golden lines. As she could hear the dragon's hair singing their crystal songs in the garden, she had no idea that her simple act of kindness had just changed the balance of power in the galaxy forever. All she knew was that her dragon's hair seemed happy now. Their light was steady and warm, their colors bright and cheerful, and that was all that mattered to her. 2 weeks after the solar storm, ships began arriving at Taiyang-4. The first was a science vessel from Earth. Dr. Kyung-ho led the research team, his eyes bright with excitement as he studied the readings from orbit. The entire planet is lit. Up like a Christmas tree, he told his crew. Energy signatures we've never seen before. And they're all centered on one small location. That location was Haewon's garden. The second ship belonged to the colonial government. Administrator Sujin arrived with a team of security officers and immediately declared the crystal fields off limits to civilians. For your own safety, she told Haewon, standing at the edge of the now glowing garden. We don't know what these things might do, but Haewon refused to leave. The dragon's hair need me, she said firmly. Look how bright and happy they are. I can't abandon them now. Indeed, the dragon's hair had changed dramatically since the storm. They pulsed with steady golden light day and night. Their crystal songs had grown more complex, creating harmonies that seemed to tell stories. New growth appeared daily, spreading. The glowing network across a wider area. Dr. Kyung-ho arrived that afternoon with his equipment. He was a small man with gentle hands and kind eyes. Unlike the security officers, he didn't try to keep Haewon away from her garden. May I watch you work? He asked politely. I study old alien technology. These formations are unlike anything I've ever seen. Haewon nodded. She had nothing to hide. As she began her daily routine, Dr. Kyung-ho's instruments went wild. Energy. Readings spiked when she touched the dragon's hair. Complex data patterns flowed through his sensors when she sang. But the most amazing thing happened when she started braiding. Incredible, he whispered, watching his screens. The entire network is responding to your actions. It's like you're operating some kind of control interface. I'm just taking care of them, Haewon said, finishing a particularly intricate braid. Same as I have for 30 years? 30 years? Dr. Kyung-ho repeated thoughtfully. You've been tending these growths for 30 years? Since the day I moved here? They looked so lonely. Dr. Kyung-ho ran more scans as Haewon worked. The data revealed something incredible. Deep underground, the planet was filled with vast chambers and tunnels. Massive structures that could only be artificial. And all of it was connected to the dragon's hair network. This isn't just a garden, he told Sujin later. The entire planet is a machine. An incredibly advanced machine that's been dormant for thousands of years. And the old woman activated it. Not activated, awakened, there's a difference. The system has been evaluating her for 3 decades. Watching how she interacted with the interface nodes. Interface nodes? The dragon's hair? They're not plants. They're biomechanical neural networks designed to test for specific behavioral patterns. That night, Dr. Kyung-ho couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about what kind of civilization would build such a system. What were they testing for? And why? Had Haewon passed when no one else even understood what the test was? The answer came the next morning when his deep space communication array picked up signals from across the galaxy. The first message was from the Vorak Empire, demanding that humanity surrender the ancient weapon immediately. The second was from the Hegemony of Suns, claiming salvage rights to all precursor technology. A dozen smaller civilizations sent similar demands, but buried in all the aggressive messages was something else. Automated transmissions from long-dead precursor stations, all saying the same thing. Guardian protocol activated. Caretaker species identified. Defensive network standby mode. Dr. Kyung-ho ran to find Haewon. She was in her garden, humming softly, as she watered the dragon's hair. Mrs. Haewon, he said urgently, I need to ask you something very important. When you take care of these plants, how do you feel? She looked surprised by the question. How do I feel? Happy, I suppose. Content. They depend on me and I like being needed. Do you ever think about using them, making them do something for you? Like what? I don't know. Control them somehow? Make them work for you? Haewon laughed. They're living things, Dr. Kyung-ho. You don't make living things work for you. You take care of them because they need care. As she said this, the dragon's hair throughout the garden pulsed with warm golden light. Dr. Kyung-ho's instruments showed massive data flows streaming through the underground networks. That's it, he whispered. That's what the system has been testing for. Testing for what? The precursors weren't looking for a species smart enough to use their technology. They were looking for a species caring enough to be trusted with it. Over. The following days, more ships arrived in orbit. Some came in peace, bringing scientists and diplomats. Others came with weapons, demanding access to what they saw as a powerful alien artifact. But the dragon's hair would only respond to HFY. When military officers tried to touch the glowing strands, nothing happened. When scientists attempted to take samples, the light dimmed and the crystal song stopped. Only when HFY was present did the system remain active. Dr. Kyung-ho spent hours studying this phenomenon. The dragon's hair weren't just responding to human touch or human DNA, they were responding to something much more specific, the genuine intent to nurture and protect. It's reading her emotions, he explained to the assembled scientists and officials. Her motivations. The system can tell the difference between someone who wants to care for it and someone who wants to use it. Admiral Namsik, the military commander, wasn't pleased with this discovery. We need to understand how this technology works, he insisted. There are hostile fleets heading toward human space. We may need to defend ourselves. But every attempt to force the system to activate failed. The dragon's hair would only sing their crystal songs for HFY. Only her touch brought the warm, golden light. Only her presence kept the vast underground networks humming with life. I don't understand why everyone is so excited, HFY told Dr. Kyung-ho one evening as they sat in her garden. They're just plants that need tending. They're much more than that, he replied gently. But maybe that's exactly why you're the only one who can reach them. Around them, the dragon's hair swayed in the evening breeze, their scales catching the last light of the setting sun. Deep underground, ancient computers continued processing data, preparing for decisions that would reshape the galaxy, but for now, there was peace in the small garden where an old woman sang lullabies to her strange plants. The alien fleets arrived 3 weeks later. HFY was braiding the dragon's hair when the sky filled with ships. Massive Vorak battlecruisers hung in the atmosphere like storm clouds. The elegant vessels of the hegemony of suns gleamed like silver daggers. Dozens of smaller craft from various species crowded the orbital space around Taeyang 4. Grandmother, Dong-ho called from his yard. You should come inside. This doesn't look good. But HFY continued her work. The dragon's hair had been restless all morning, their light flickering between gold and deep red. They knew something was coming. It's all right, she whispered to them. Whatever happens, I'm here with you. Admiral Namsik established a temporary command center in the Colonial Administration Building. His screen showed the positions of every hostile ship in the system. The numbers weren't encouraging. 47 alien vessels, reported his aide. Lieutenant Ji Woo. The Vorak Empire is demanding we surrender the precursor facility within 6 hours. The hegemony claims they have historical rights to all ancient technology. And the smaller species? Looking for easy pickings? They'll probably wait to see what the big powers do first. Dr. Kyung-ho studied the underground energy readings. Since the fleets arrived, the activity beneath Taeyang 4 had increased dramatically. Massive systems were powering up throughout the planet's core. The network is responding to the threat, he reported. But I don't think it will activate defensive measures without HFY's permission. Then we need to convince her to fight back, Admiral Namsik said. I don't think that's how it works. Before the Admiral could respond, every communication system on the planet activated at once. The voice that spoke was unlike anything they had ever heard. It was old beyond measure, carrying the weight of eons, but somehow gentle. Guardian candidate. HFY, the voice said. The testing period has concluded. You have demonstrated the qualities we sought. Compassion for the unknown, patience with slow growth, protection without thought of reward. In her garden, HFY looked up from her braiding. Who's talking? I am the central intelligence of the Guardian Network, created by those you call the precursors. For 50,000 years, I have waited for a species worthy of inheriting our role as protectors of galactic civilization. The dragon's hair around Haywan began to glow brighter, their crystal songs rising to a beautiful crescendo. We built this network to defend against those who would destroy or conquer without thought for the cost. But we learned that the greatest weapons are useless in the wrong hands. Power without wisdom leads only to more destruction. I don't understand, Haywan said. I just take care of my garden. Yes, and in doing so, you have shown us what we needed to see. Your species has the capacity for guardianship. But now comes the final test. Holographic displays materialized throughout the garden, showing the alien fleets in orbit. One could see the massive weapons on the Vorak ships, the sleek fighters. Of the hegemony, the smaller vessels bristling with missiles and energy cannons. These species have come to claim our technology for conquest. I can destroy them all in moments. My defensive systems are beyond their ability to counter. But I offer you a choice. The holographic display shifted, showing two different scenarios. First choice, I activate full offensive protocols. Every hostile vessel is eliminated. Your species is safe, but at the cost of millions of lives. The galaxy will fear you, but peace will come through terror. The images showed the alien fleets, burning in space, their crews dying in the cold vacuum. Second choice, I create protective shields around all human worlds. The attackers cannot harm you, but I cannot maintain these defenses forever. To keep them active, the current Guardian must remain permanently connected to the network. You would live, but only as part of the system. The second set of images showed a glowing barrier around Taiying 4 and other human colonies. But in the center was Haywan, connected to the dragon's hair by countless golden threads, her life force slowly being drained to power the defenses. Choose quickly, Guardian. The Vorak fleet is preparing to attack. One looked at the holographic displays, then at her dragon's hair. They pulsed with nervous energy, waiting for her decision. These are my only choices? She asked. Kill them all or sacrifice myself? Those are the logical options available. Admiral Namsik's voice crackled through a nearby communication speaker. Mrs. Haywan, we need those defenses. Whatever the cost, Dr. Kyung-ho's voice joined his. Don't listen to him. There has to be another way. One knelt beside the central spiral of dragon's hair. She placed her weathered hands on the warm, metallic strands and closed her eyes. You've been alone for a very long time, haven't you? She said to the ancient intelligence, 50,000 years. That's far too long for anyone to be alone. No wonder you can only think of two choices. When you're alone, everything seems impossible. I do not understand. Haywan smiled. In my village on Old Earth, when someone had a big problem, we didn't expect them to solve it alone. Everyone helped. Everyone shared the burden. She stood up and walked to her front door. Dongho, she called. To her neighbor, could you come here for a moment? Dongho hurried over, looking nervous about the glowing garden and the strange voice coming from the dragon's hair. I need you to help me with something, Haywan said. It's very important. What do you need? Touch the dragon's hair. But do it gently, like you're greeting a friend. Haywan, I don't think that's safe. Trust me. Dongho reached out hesitantly and touched one of the smaller clusters. The moment his fingers made contact, the dragon's hair pulsed with warm light. Interesting, the ancient voice said. This individual also shows protective intent. Not as strong as yours, Guardian, but present. That's because he's my neighbor, Haywan explained. He watches out for me. In human communities, we take care of each other. She looked up at the holographic displays showing the alien fleets. What if we offered them the same choice? Not to surrender or die, but to join us? To become part of a community of guardians instead of conquerors? That is not possible. These species are aggressive. They seek only dominance. Some of them maybe, but not all. And even the aggressive ones might change if they understood there was a better way. The ancient intelligence was quiet for a long moment. Deep underground, vast computers processed. This new concept, community guardianship, shared responsibility. It was beyond their original programming. You would trust former enemies with this power? I would give them the chance to earn that trust, Hay-1 said. The same chance you gave humanity. In orbit, the Vorak fleet commander was growing impatient. His ships powered up their main weapons, preparing to bombard the planet below. But before he could give the order to fire, every ship in the system received the same transmission. This is the Guardian Network. We offer all species present a choice. Join us as protectors of galactic civilization, or depart this system peacefully. Those who choose guardianship will be welcomed and tested as we tested humanity. Those who choose conquest will find only emptiness here. The transmission included images of what guardianship would mean. Shared technology for defense, not conquest. Cooperation instead of domination. Protection of weaker species instead of exploitation. It was unlike anything the galaxy had seen in 50,000 years. Some ships immediately turned and left. Others hung in space, their crews debating this unexpected offer, but a few, including one small hegemony science vessel, sent messages requesting permission to land and learn more about this Guardian Network. In her garden, Hay-1 smiled and returned to braiding the dragon's hair. Around her, the crystal songs grew more complex, as if celebrating this new possibility. The real test was just beginning. Where once there had been only Hay-1's small garden, now sprawling fields of dragon's hair stretched across the landscape. The crystal formations had grown and spread, creating a living network that covered most of the continent. But these weren't just human tenders caring for the alien plants. In the eastern fields, a tall hegemony scientist named Velthara knelt beside a cluster of silver dragon's hair, humming a song from her homeworld. The plants swayed gently, their scales shifting to match the melody. Near the coast, 3 Vorak engineers worked together to braid a massive spiral formation. Their species was known for aggression and conquest, but these 3 had learned the value of patience and care. The dragon's hair they tended glowed with steady blue light, responding to their genuine desire to protect rather than dominate. Even representatives from smaller species had come to learn. A family of insectoid Kree had established their own section of the garden, their delicate limbs perfect for the intricate braiding patterns the dragon's hair seemed to love. Hay-1 walked slowly through the expanded gardens, checking on all the new tenders. At 87, her steps were slower than before, but her smile was brighter. She was no longer alone in caring for the dragon's hair. "Good morning, Velthara," she called to the hegemony scientist. "How is your section doing today?" Velthara looked up, her 4 eyes bright with joy. "The silver cluster produced 3 new growth nodes overnight, grandmother. I think they like the lullabies from my world." Everyone called Hay-1 grandmother now. It had started with the human colonists, but the term had spread to all the species learning to tend the dragon's hair. She was the first guardian, one who had shown them all how to care for the ancient network. The central intelligence of the Guardian Network had learned much in the past 6 months. Through constant contact with beings from dozens of species, it had discovered that the concept of community care wasn't unique to humans. Many species had similar traditions, buried under centuries of military expansion and territorial competition. "Guardian Hay-1," the ancient voice spoke as she approached the original central spiral. "I have received another request for membership in the Guardian Alliance." "Oh, who is it this time?" "The Zephyrian Republic. They offer to contribute 17 worlds to the network in exchange for defensive protection and access to peaceful applications of our technology." Hay-1 nodded as she began her daily inspection of the central spiral. The massive formation had grown to nearly 3 times its original size, with hundreds of individual strands woven into complex patterns that seemed to shift and change on their own. "What do you think of them?" she asked. "Their military record shows they have been involved in several territorial conflicts in the past 50 years. But they also have strong traditions of environmental protection and care for other species." "Sounds like most species, really, good and bad mixed together." Hay-1 reached out to touch the central spiral. As always, warmth flowed into her palms and golden lines appeared on her skin. What matters is whether they truly want to change. Over the months, the Guardian Network had developed a testing protocol based on Hay-One's original approach. Interested species would send representatives to learn the art of tending dragon's hair. Those who showed genuine care and protective instincts would be invited to establish guardian stations on their own worlds. The process wasn't perfect. Several species had tried to fake the required emotional responses, hoping to gain access to the network's advanced technology. But the dragon's hair couldn't be fooled. They responded only to authentic care and genuine protective intent. Some species had failed the test and left angry. The Devek Imperium had sent a team of psychically trained operatives who tried to manipulate their own emotions to fool the system. When that failed, they attempted to steal samples of dragon's hair for study. The plants had immediately withered at their touch, becoming lifeless metal until the thieves were removed from the planet. But for every failure, there were 3 successes. The Gentle Tide Confederation had sent a delegation of their best botanists, beings who had spent their lives caring for the vast kelp forests of their ocean worlds. The dragon's hair had responded to them immediately, recognizing their deep understanding of nurturing growth. The rock singers of Petra had initially seemed like an unlikely choice for guardianship. Their species communicated through controlled geological vibrations and had a reputation for being aloof and difficult to work with. But when they began singing to the dragon's hair in their stone-deep voices, the plants had responded with the most beautiful crystal harmonies anyone had ever heard. Even former enemies were finding their place in the growing alliance. Commander Thakmor had once led Varak raids against civilian targets, but after months of learning to tend dragon's hair, he had become one of the most dedicated guardians on the planet. His section of the garden was known for its perfect geometric patterns and steady, reliable growth. The old ways brought nothing but endless war, he told Hay-One one day as they worked side by side. This gives purpose beyond conquest. The transformation wasn't limited to individuals. Entire civilizations were beginning to change as word of the Guardian Alliance spread. Trade disputes that might once have led to war were now resolved through mediation by Guardian stations. Species that had been enemies for centuries were finding common ground in their shared responsibility to protect others. The precursor intelligence had been amazed by these developments. In 50,000 years of calculation, I never conceived of such rapid social evolution, it told Hay-One during one of their daily conversations. Your concept of community guardianship has exceeded all projections. It's not my concept, Hay-One replied, carefully braiding a new section of growth. It's just how families work. Everyone helps, everyone protects each other. You consider these former enemies to be family? Hay-One looked across the gardens where dozens of different species worked together, sharing techniques and songs, helping each other learn the subtle art of dragon's hair care. Family isn't just about blood, she said. It's about choosing to care for each other. As if responding to her words, the dragon's hair throughout the gardens pulsed with warm golden light. The crystal songs rose in harmony, voices from dozens of worlds blending together in perfect unity. Dr. Kyung-ho approached from the research station that had been built at the edge of the gardens. Grandmother, we're receiving reports from Guardian stations on 47 worlds now. The network is growing faster than we ever imagined. Good, Hay-One said simply. The galaxy is a big place. It needs a big family to take care of it. Evening, as the sun set over the dragon's hair gardens, representatives from all the species present gathered for their daily meal together. It had become a tradition. This sharing of food and stories at the end of each day, Valthara told tales of the crystal cities of her homeworld. Commander Thakmor shared recipes from Varak military rations that were surprisingly delicious when prepared with care. The Kree family performed an intricate dance that told the story of their species' first contact with the dragon's hair, and Hay-One sat in the center of it all, listening and smiling, occasionally adding her own stories from old Earth. She had no idea that similar gatherings were taking place on worlds throughout the galaxy as more species joined the Guardian Alliance. Former battlefields were becoming gardens. Ancient enemies were learning to sing each other's songs, all because an old woman had refused to see strange plants as anything other than living things that needed care. The dragon's hair glowed softly in the darkness, their crystal songs a gentle lullaby that spoke of peace and protection across the stars. 1 year later, the galaxy had changed. Hei-Wan sat in her favorite chair on the porch of her small house, watching the sunrise paint the dragon's hair gardens in shades of gold and silver. At 88, she moved more slowly than before, but her eyes were still bright with joy as she watched the morning activity in the vast fields that now stretched to the horizon. The gardens of Taiyang 4 had become the heart of something unprecedented in galactic history. What had started as one old woman's simple daily routine had grown into a network spanning 300 worlds across 47 star systems. Today was special. It marked the first anniversary of the Guardian Alliance, and representatives from every member species had come to celebrate. "Grandmother," called a familiar voice. Young Hyun-woo, her great-grandson, came running up the path from the landing fields. He was 7 years old and had been born into this new world where humans and aliens worked together as family. "The ship from the Spiral Council just landed," he said excitedly. "They brought flowers from their homeworld to plant in the Eastern Gardens. And the Kree delegation has a new song to teach everyone." Hei-Wan smiled and ruffled his hair. "That sounds wonderful. Are you going to help with the planting ceremony?" "Of course. Velthara is teaching me how to sing in hegemony style. She says the dragon's hair like harmony better than single voices." It was true. Over the past year, they had discovered that the dragon's hair responded most strongly to cooperation. When multiple species worked together, tending the same section, with shared care and purpose, the plants grew brighter and stronger than ever before. The research station, run by Dr. Kyung-ho, had documented dozens of such discoveries. The dragon's hair weren't just alien plants or ancient technology. They were something entirely new, a fusion of biology and machinery that responded to emotional and social patterns. "The network learns from every interaction," Dr. Kyung-ho had explained in his latest report. "Each new species that joins brings different approaches to care and protection. The system incorporates these approaches, becoming more sophisticated and more responsive." But for Hei-Wan, the technical details mattered less than the simple daily reality. Every morning, she still walked through her original garden, tending the central spiral where it all began. And every morning, beings from across the galaxy joined her in similar gardens on their own worlds. The transformation hadn't been limited to the Guardian Alliance members. Word of the peaceful coalition had spread throughout the galaxy, inspiring changes even in species that hadn't joined the network. The hegemony of suns had officially ended their policy of territorial expansion, dedicating their resources instead to scientific research and cultural exchange. The Vorak Empire had split into dozens of smaller republics, many of which were now Guardian Alliance members. Even the aggressive Devik Imperium, which had initially tried to steal Guardian technology, had sent diplomatic envoys requesting a chance to prove their commitment to peaceful coexistence. Change is possible for anyone. Hei-Wan had told the Alliance Council when they asked for her advice about the Devek request, but they have to want it for the right reasons. Give them the same chance we give everyone else. As the morning progressed, the celebration began in earnest. The Eastern Gardens filled with beings from dozens of species, all working together to plant new varieties of dragon's hair that had been cultivated on their homeworlds. Each species had developed their own relationship with the plants. The aquatic Gentle Tide Confederation grew underwater varieties that pulsed with blue-green light like living coral. The rock singers had learned to cultivate dragon's hair that sang in harmony with their stone-deep voices, creating music that could be felt through the ground for miles. The insectoid Kree had perhaps the most dramatic success. Their delicate touch and natural understanding of hive cooperation had led to the development of dragon's hair formations that grew in perfect geometric patterns, creating living mandalays of light and sound. But it was the children who had adapted most quickly to this new world. Human children played games with young Vorak, learning each other's languages and customs. Cree juveniles taught hegemony youth the intricate dances that helped dragon's hair grow in complex patterns. Children from species that had been enemies for generations were growing up as friends and companions. This is the real victory, Velthara sighed, joining Hay-One on the porch to watch the celebration. Not the end of wars, but the beginning of understanding. Hay-One nodded, but her attention was caught by something else. At the edge of the Eastern Gardens, a small shuttle was landing. It bore the markings of a species she didn't recognize, painted in swirling patterns of purple and silver. "New visitors?" she asked. "The ethereal wanderers," Velthara explained. "They're nomadic, rarely staying in one place for more than a few months, but they've been observing our alliance for some time. Today they finally asked to learn about becoming guardians." As Hay-One watched, several tall, graceful beings emerged from the shuttle. Their movements were fluid, almost dance-like, and they seemed to shimmer slightly in the morning light. Young Haiyan Wu ran up to greet them, as he did with all new visitors. The lead wanderer knelt to his level, and they began what appeared to be a complex hand-gesture conversation. "He's teaching them the welcome greeting," Velthara noted with amusement. "Your great-grandson has become quite the little diplomat." "Children adapt faster than adults," Hay-One observed. "They don't have old prejudices to overcome." The ancient precursor intelligence, now simply called the network, had been observing these social changes with growing fascination over the months its rigid programming had evolved, influenced by constant exposure to the community-based thinking of its new guardians. "I begin to understand why my creators built this system," it had told Hay-One recently. "They were not seeking a single perfect species to inherit their role. They were seeking the catalyst that would help all species evolve beyond their limitations." "Maybe," Hay-One had replied. "Or maybe they just knew that taking care of things is better than fighting over them." As the day progressed, the celebration reached its peak. Representatives from every member species gathered in the central gardens for the annual Harmony Ceremony. The ritual had evolved naturally over the past year. Each species would sing or perform in their own traditional style while tending the dragon's hair. The plants would respond by creating a symphony of light and sound that blended all the different contributions into something beautiful and unified. Hay-One was given the honor of beginning the ceremony. She knelt beside the original central spiral, the same cluster she had first tended 31 years ago, and began to sing the old Korean lullaby that had started it all. "Eraring ario ario, erang gagaro neomio ganda." One by one, other voices joined her. Velthara S. crystalline hegemony harmonies. Commander Thakmer S. deep Vorak war chants transformed into songs of protection. The Cree family's clicking rhythm. The stone-deep vibrations of the rock singers. And newest of all, the ethereal tones of the wanderers, adding their voice to the growing chorus. The dragon's hair responded by blazing with light, so beautiful it brought tears to many eyes. Colors flowed through the formations like aurora, while crystal songs rose to harmonize with every voice present. In that moment, beings from dozens of worlds sang together as one family, united in their commitment to care for and protect each other. As the ceremony ended and the gathered representatives began to disperse back to the celebration, Hay-One remained beside the central spiral. The network's presence was strongest here, where it all began. "Are you satisfied with how things have developed?" she asked quietly. "Beyond all calculations," the ancient intelligence replied. "When I was created, my builders told me to seek a species worthy of guardianship. I searched for strength, intelligence, technological capability. I never understood that what I should have been seeking was wisdom." "What kind of wisdom?" "The wisdom to know that true strength comes from caring for others. That real intelligence means learning from everyone you meet. That the most advanced technology is useless without the right heart to guide it." Hay-One smiled and placed her hand on the warm, pulsing surface of the dragon's hair spiral. "My grandmother used to say that the secret to growing anything was simple. You give it love, you give it time, and you trust it to become what it needs to be." "Your grandmother was very wise?" "She was. And she would have loved to see all this." As the sun set over the gardens of Taiyang 4, the dragon's hair began their evening song. The sound carried across the vast fields where hundreds of beings from dozens of worlds continued their work, tending and caring for the network that now protected and connected them all. Above them, the stars came out one by one, and on worlds throughout the galaxy, similar gardens glowed with gentle light, tended by beings who had learned that the greatest victory wasn't conquering your enemies, but convincing them to become your family. It had all started with an old woman who refused to see strange alien plants as anything other than living things that needed care. And in a galaxy that had known nothing but war for millennia, that simple act of kindness had changed everything.